Welcome back to my YouTube channel. In our last episode, we watched Edward III carry England from glory to stagnation. Today, we meet his 10-year-old grandson and heir, Richard II, a monarch whose reign swings from dazzling pageantry to bitter downfall. Richard faced the first great popular uprising in English history, clashed with powerful nobles, and was ultimately deposed by his cousin, Henry Bolingbroke. Few reigns illustrate more vividly the perilous balance between kingly image and political reality. Richard was born on the 6th of January 1367 at Bordeaux during the English occupation of Aquitaine. He was the younger son of Edward, the Black Prince, and Joan of Kent. When the Black Prince died in June 1376 and Edward III followed, a year later Parliament proclaimed the 10-year-old Richard as king, with his uncles John of Gaunt and Thomas of Woodstock dominating the Regency Council. Historian Nigel Saul writes in Richard II, "A brittle glory that the boy's upbringing in the refined courts of Aquitaine and later Westminster bred in him a conviction that majesty was theatre as much as power. That belief would shape his rule, for better and for worse." Within 4 years, the kingdom erupted. A poll tax, triple levied to finance the 100 Years' War, ignited the Peasants' Revolt. Rebels from Kent and Essex, led by Wat Tyler and the radical preacher John Ball, marched on London demanding the abolition of serfdom, fair rents, and the removal of corrupt advisers. Richard, still only 14, rode out to meet them at Mile End and later at Smithfield. There he promised reforms and, after Tyler was killed, calmed the mob with the famous words, "You shall have no captain but me." Though most concessions were swiftly revoked, Richard's personal courage salvaged the monarchy in its first major popular crisis. Paul Strome calls this the making and the seedbed of Richard's self-image as a quasi-sacral ruler. In 1382, Richard married Anne of Bohemia, daughter of Holy Roman Emperor Charles IV. The match brought little dowry but valuable diplomatic ties to Central Europe. Anne's gentle influence encouraged a cosmopolitan court. Bohemian fashions, manuscripts and artistic styles flowed into England. Richard poured money into ceremonial display, gilded liveries for his retainers, jewelled crowns for every liturgical season, and, most memorably, the rebuilding of Westminster Hall with Hugh Herland's revolutionary hammer-beam roof. Art historian Jessica Berenbeim calls the hall a stone manifesto of Plantagenet magnificence. Literature flourished too. Geoffrey Chaucer, who served on Anne's 1383 embassy to Milan, likely read early drafts of the Canterbury Tales at court. Richard adopted the White Hart badge and commissioned the Wilton diptych, an icon of English kingship, as divine. Extravagance and favouritism bred resentment among senior peers, especially when France threatened invasion and royal finances bled. In 1386, the wonderful Parliament forced Richard to accept a commission that effectively stripped him of autonomy. He brooded, then struck back. 5 magnates, Thomas of Woodstock, the Earls of Arundel, Warwick, Nottingham and Henry Bolingbroke, who was John of Gaunt's son, formed the Lords Appellant, accusing the king's friends of treason. Their forces crushed Richard's favourites at Radcot Bridge. The 1388 merciless Parliament condemned many of the royal household to death or exile. Richard was humiliated, but not broken. He stored the memory carefully. After John of Gaunt returned from Spain in 1389 and brokered peace, Richard announced his majority. "We have been long led by tutors, now we will rule ourselves." For nearly a decade he governed moderately, negotiating the Truce of Loylingham with France in 1396 and remitting burdensome taxes. Yet, beneath the calm, Richard amassed a loyal affinity of Cheshire archers and cultivated an exalted theory of kingship, drawing on Roman law and French absolutism. In 1397 he unleashed his revenge. 3 Lords Appellant were arrested, Arundel was beheaded, Gloucester likely murdered at Calais, and Warwick exiled. A pliant Parliament granted him customs revenues for life and the power to delegate parliamentary business. Moves biographer Anthony Tuck terms England's first brush with absolutism. Richard's second marriage that year to the 6-year-old Isabel of Valois sealed a 28-year peace with France, but underscored his detachment from domestic concerns. When John of Gaunt died in February 1399, Richard seized the Lancastrian estates and exiled Gaunt's heir, Henry Bolingbroke, for life. It was a fatal overreach. While Richard campaigned in Ireland, Bolingbroke landed at Ravenspur in June 1399, proclaiming only his right to Lancaster. Noble support snowballed, many remembered 1388. Richard returned too late. Deserted by key allies, he surrendered at Conwy and was taken to the Tower. In Parliament, he was forced to abdicate in favour of Henry, now King Henry IV. Chronicler Adam of Usk recorded Richard's quiet words as he handed over the crown: "God's will be done." Richard was confined first in the Tower, then at Pontefract Castle. In February 1400 he died, almost certainly starved to death, though rumours of murder abounded. He was 33. Henry IV displayed the embalmed body around the realm to quash speculation of escape. Nevertheless, legends of Richard alive would stir rebellion for decades. How should we judge Richard II? He was an aesthete and a visionary of royal majesty, patron of poets and builders. Yet he misunderstood the political culture of a realm that still expected consensus. His theatrical kingship, writes historian Chris Given Wilson, was a 15th century idea in a 14th century world. Richard left enduring cultural footprints, the English vernacular's flowering Westminster Hall's grandeur and the Wilton diptych's mystical beauty. Politically, his deposition shattered the notion of sacrosanct monarchy and opened the door to the Wars of the Roses. Richard II's story warns that charisma and symbolism cannot substitute for trust and broad-based power. He reminds us how quickly a crown can slip when a king overreaches. Join us next time as we follow Henry IV, the usurper who must now defend his shaky throne, and see how Lancaster's rise reshapes England's destiny. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you won't miss the next episode in our saga of England's medieval monarchy.